In this video, we strive to remain spoiler-free, discussing only story and plot elements from the books relevant to what has occurred already on the show. When necessary, a spoiler warning with a countdown will be given. This episode contains sensitive discussion of an adult nature. This may be triggering for some. Please watch at your own discretion.
Hey, I'm Jen.
I'm Max.
And I'm the Geeky Hippie. Welcome back to What the Adaptation. We're the show that reviews for you adaptations from one form to another. This week we have our guest, who's kind of like the designated hitter. We have Bill. How you doing, Bill?
Doing good. How you guys doing?
Doing great. Thanks for coming back tonight.
Thanks for having me.
It's been fun. I hear you have another YouTube channel.
Yes, actually, Non-Terrestrial Half-Life hosted with you.
Oh, yeah, no wonder I heard about it. What's that show about?
It's basically taking books we read in the first half of our lives, rereading them now and seeing if they still stand up or if it's just nostalgia that makes us love them.
Sounds like fun. And next episode, we've got Jen coming on. We'll be discussing Dragons of Spring Dawning by Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman, part of the Dragonlance Chronicles. Eventually, we're going to get Max on for something. So, Dream of a Thousand Cats and Calliope.
Yep.
What'd you guys think of these two? Oh, Max, tell us about this. These.
Yep. That's what I was waiting for. Episode 11 is the two stories, Dream of a Thousand Cats and Calliope. Hisco Hulsing directed Dream of a Thousand Cats. He's known for the TV series Undone. Louise Hooper directed Calliope, and she's known for Treason, The Witcher, and Rings of Power. The writer for both episodes is Catherine Smith McMullen, known for Bloom and Two Sentence Horror Stories.
That's a good credit there. So, Calliope and Dream of a Thousand Cats. What do you guys think of these two episodes?
Very hard to watch sometimes. There were aspects of both, I think, that are hard to watch.
Yeah.
Definitely agree.
Definitely had.
I think they were.
Go ahead. All right, whoever.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Max.
I think they were some of like the better episodes of this season, even though some aspects were harder to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'll probably say that I like the cats a little bit better than the Calliope episode, even though going into it, it's kind of funny because Calliope was always my favorite muse as a kid. In fact, I wanted a tattoo of Calliope on me. It was my first tattoo for the longest time. She was very specific to me. So I came into this as like, oh my gosh, we're doing an episode of a Calliope. And I was like,
horrified. Just completely horrified.
yeah. So I was like, okay, yeah. So the witches do come back. I mean, you get the three witches again. They make an appearance, which is kind of like you weren't expecting that. But yeah, it was kind of a shocker, I guess, to me.
This is my favorite installation in the season. My favorite 1 hour block that Netflix did with the Sandman. There are good episodes in the rest of the season. I mean, The Sound of Her Wings was just amazing. 24/7 was really damn good. And I thought the finale was great. It looks like the finale is not universally loved, but you know, I was looking around online and I'm like, all right, no surprise. But all that, I saw this and I'm just like, this is amazing. And part of it right off the bat, the animation. Oh my goodness, the animation just blew me away.
Yeah, it was very good.
I thought it was perfection.
It was beautiful. It was very beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
But watching cats get drowned, that was hard. Watching a person get chomped by a giant cat, that was pretty terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a cat lover, so I'm really kind of mixed about this episode. That episode, like, do I like the cats in this show, or do they scare me? And you know, it's like, but
Can it be?
I like Calliope. Yeah, it is probably both.
I'd say there's always that story about, you know, if you die, your dog will at least have decency to wait a week before eating you. A cat will just munch on you in the next hour.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably.
There's a great book called "Will My Cat Eat My Eyeballs When I Die?"
Yes.
Yes, I love that book.
I'll have to
Spoiler
look for
alert, the
that.
answer is yes.
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 Yeah. Whoever animated it definitely knew how to draw cats. The way their tails moved, the way they reacted
The
to
way their
things.
It's actually
legs, the
mocap.
muscles.
Yeah,
Well,
almost.
there was some CG. It's painted. There's
Yes.
elements of painting. I was reading about it and CG there, but the movement of the muscles as the cats walked, they had the cat's movement. Wow.
Yeah,
I've
very good.
not seen cats move so perfectly in animation before.
Yeah, they're very good.
So, but yeah, I really like these two.
Mhm.
Even with that and the bad thing that happens to her in Calliope.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's pretty rough. I think they did a good job in the show of implying it without throwing it in your faces and making it, very triggering.
Mhm.
Oh,
Which
so
I mean,
much so I didn't notice it the first couple of times I watched it until after I reread the issue and I was reminded that that happened. And then when that happened, he comes back with the scratch on his cheek, the blood. I'm like, oh, it took me a minute, but I finally figured it out. I can be pretty dense sometimes.
I really liked Calliope. I honestly, Tom Sturridge did a great job of showing growth. He was so much more empathetic in this episode than any other episode, even at the end
Yeah.
of the season finale, where we see him changing and bringing back the nightmare as a dream. This, he showed way more empathy and the heartbreak for Calliope. There's some quotes in there that are just beautiful, but at the same time heartbreaking, that I just love.
He's still not a nice guy.
Well, he's not a guy.
He's an asshole, though.
He's an endless.
Yeah.
Dude, he's been
He's an
alive
endless. Yeah.
since the dawn of time. I mean, what would that do to you emotionally?
Yeah.
You got to look at that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, I'd like to live a long time like that. That'd be fun.
But God, that's overrated. No, thank you.
Yeah, agreed.
I just want to see what the future looks like.
Don't you remember the theme song to Highlander?
Who wants to live forever? Queen.
My favorite Queen song, actually.
That's a great movie too.
Yeah, it is.
All right. So we're going to start with the questions then.
Sure.
Okay. If there were any changes to the source material, did it affect how you enjoyed this episode or these episodes? Start with Bill.
As far as the core stories, they really didn't change much. Shortened a little bit here and there, took out some of the smaller stuff, but I think it flowed fine, and most of it didn't change. Like I said, I do like the fact that they implied the sexual violence rather than throwing it in your face. I mean, that was one thing about the audiobooks that was a little rough.
Yeah.
I mean, just some of the descriptions, you get a better idea of what's going on when he goes up those stairs, and it's not pleasant and it's just nauseating. So I think they did a good job of hinting at it without being vulgar. I guess that's the right word, vulgar about it.
There weren't any serious changes that bothered me, or I'll agree with Bill. I like the change there where they've tempered it down a little. Makes it easier to watch, and it's still hard to watch. So,
Right.
There's one change though that it's got to be deliberate, because the line it's taken from is almost identical. From the book to the show is identical, except for the one little change. The fate to tell Calliope, like you, your one-time admirer has been ensnared by mortals. But in the show, it's like you, your former husband has been ensnared by mortals.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think they made that change? Anyone have any ideas?
I absolutely do, and I absolutely cannot say, because it will spoil season 2 for those who haven't read Beyond.
I have not
Oh,
read Beyond.
okay.
It
I
would
was
also
going
spoil
to
me.
I was going to assume it was some retcon in future episodes or
Okay.
books is my guess.
Yeah,
Hmm.
this leads heavily into a plot line later in the comics
Yeah,
that I
I
can't get into. So
yeah, I picked up some hints about that when I was reading about it tonight. I couldn't tell you what exactly it was, but I remember seeing something like, "Oh, okay, well, that's yeah." But,
Jen?
okay, so it's a spoiler.
Yeah, I was about to say, I was going to say the same exact thing as them. I was like, I didn't really notice too much, but then again, I don't have the reading ahead situation, so I would also be spoiled. So I'm good.
yes,
Yeah.
I meant, did you have any changes or source things that affected it?
No, not that I can think of actually off the top of my head. So yeah, nothing there. Sorry.
For me, it was kind of like that one complaint I've had throughout the whole TV series so far is that they try to make people, the villains, essentially more sympathetic than they are in the book or the
And they,
audiobook.
yeah, they
And
did.
in Calliope is like because they didn't show anything on screen and made it more abstract, more off screen, where you may not have known what was happening. I felt like they were trying to overshadow what he was really doing and how bad he was, especially compared to the audiobook. The audiobook's like, I would say, Dream, keep doing what you're doing for a lot longer.
Yeah.
And this one, I was like, it was so pushed into the background that I felt like they were trying to cover up how bad of a guy this guy really was. It wasn't just he was trying to meet a deadline. It goes a lot beyond that.
well, yeah, he was fundamentally flawed, and they go into more detail about
In the
that.
comic, the very first day he has her back to his house, he assaults her. That very
Yes.
day. On the show, they held off. They held off. It seemed like a while, but
I don't even think he bought her candy on the comic.
No,
I
he
don't
didn't
think
buy her
so.
gifts at all. In fact, he basically kept her as his indentured sex slave, which is
Yeah.
gross, you know, and horrid. In today's climate, I can see them scaling that back.
Mhm.
I understand why they did it, so I'm okay with it. I wouldn't have liked a visual representation of that occurring. That would have been too
Exactly.
much for me. I would have turned it off, to be honest.
Yeah.
Do you guys think, since this episode was both written by a woman and directed by a woman, do you think the changes would have been the same if it had been a guy writer and a guy director? Or do you think it would have been less sensitive about it?
I'd say less sensitive.
Really?
Well,
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but yeah, probably at least somewhat less sensitive.
Jen?
I would say they would probably panel like people before they put it out, and they would probably, I don't know, probably get the opinion of, I'm sure they do that anyway, but I don't think it would be necessarily the director so much as like someone was saying the climate. I think that it doesn't even matter the sex of the director at this point. I think it's more the audience that they're trying to tone it down for. So since the audience, the same issue applies, I think the same toning down would happen, because like Bill said, he would have just turned it off. I think if you paneled people, they would just be like, why is this necessary to show on screen? Because I'm seeing that a lot now. There's a lot of people, after any form of media comes out, TV, movies, you get a lot of pushback from people that have like very graphic, either whether it be like sexual violence or just violence in general. A lot of people are like, okay, does this enhance the story for me actually getting a visual representation of this scene happening? Or could it have been, described off screen or in some other way where it's not so graphic? I think they also, want a broader audience to watch their media. And if they push too far into that category, that would have alienated a lot of
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
So,
And I mean, I love Sandman, but I would have turned it off.
mhm.
There are certain scenes in certain movies I can't watch. I've had family members who have been assaulted, and it's just vileness to me, and I don't want to see it. I know I'm a big fan of The Last of Us, so there are parts that are going to bother the hell out of me visually, and I understand that. And those are episodes I may fast forward through parts. So
I'm still an episode behind.
Just wait till
every
episode
week I'm
3.
going to be an episode.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
man.
know.
Just wait till episode 3.
Yeah, that's the next one I have to watch, and then tonight's episode that started 50 minutes ago. So I'll edit that out and just want to let people know exactly when we recorded this.
Okay.
There was a change that happened within the story that happened in both versions of the story that I wanted to point out because I think it's Neil Gaiman giving a nod to a friend of his. He met Scottish writer Ian Banks back in like 83 or 84, according to Neil Gaiman. And Ian Banks is what the author went by when he wrote mainstream literature, mainstream fiction. But when he started writing science fiction, he went with the name Ian M. Banks. And he wrote a lot of science fiction with the name Ian M. Banks, genre fiction, as they were disparagingly referring to in the show, and at the same time, we've got the author's changed his name for this book he's writing that's in genre to Rick without a K. And I, looking at the timing, it was like 3-4 years after his buddy published under a different name for genre than he would for regular. I can't help but think that was a nod to his buddy when he wrote this. I mean, yeah, the character's a jerk, but it's just this aspect, it just, there's too much of a similarity. And it seems alike, I don't know.
It kind of reminds me of the scene where he's talking about being a feminist writer. That's very, very cringeworthy. Made me wonder if that was some kind of criticism towards like the writing industry, towards a specific writer or someone else, or just say male writers in general writing female characters being lauded as being very great.
There was another part actually in there where when he's talking about the film thing, and he's like, no, 50% of the cast has to be women and people of color. And I'm like, I think that's just a nod towards the fact that people can do good things and be really horrible people.
There's actually a movement in Hollywood for some kind of writer that people want in their contract that requires exactly that. 50% of the cast and crew is women, and other stuff like that. And the naysayers will call it a wokest agenda, but it's just doing right after a century or so of doing it wrong. So, but yeah, that was inspired by a real life thing. So I can't remember the name of it, but.
Right. So moving on to question 2. How will the show adapt to scenery, costumes, prop, music, CGI, etc.? And, obviously, to me, I'd say, obviously, the cat episode was just the shining star of this.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And the voice acting as well. So.
Yeah. Agreed.
There's no CG involved in the second episode, the second half. Not that I can remember.
I was trying to remember
if her room changing.
Yeah,
when her mother's
when
came
the
in.
fates come.
Yeah, when the fates came.
Yeah, that's it. That's the only thing I can think.
I'm like, yeah, his fingers, the bloody fingers and everything. I think that was pretty practical because it looked practical. So, but the flesh hanging off of it was a nice touch. You could see pieces of it, and I'm like, I like that.
Yeah.
Suffer.
I gotta admit,
I think my favorite part was the cat was playing with the human, throwing up in the air.
Oh yeah.
Looked like a fun ride until snap.
I just love watching the cats walk and jump, and I was entranced when I watched that.
Okay, it's confirmed. Glenn's a furry.
Hey, I'm not gonna say it.
I really enjoy the part, like there's so many like different tones they touched on when you have like the main cat as Siamese. By the way, it's the only Siamese that you see jumping down from the tree and landing on the angel, and there's the angel statue with the wings spread against the full moon. So much
just glad its hands weren't.
So many beats were hit there, and I was like, okay, there she's like perched on the angel grave talking to everyone. I really enjoyed that symbolism there. That was very nice. Yeah, I really enjoyed that part.
Yeah, I call her the prophet. That's pretty much
that's what she's called in the book.
Is the prophet.
Yeah, in the
Sandra
credits,
Oh
she's
did the voice, and it was just
Very good.
beautiful.
It was. Hmm.
and I love that they had audiobook Morpheus doing golden haired man or golden maned man, the human that was like, we gotta dream this. It was James McAvoy, which I'm like, that's cool bringing him in. Some serious Doctor Who connections in there, other than, well, we'll get to actors.
Next question was, how well was the dialogue in this episode, the written dialogue, and how well did the actors deliver those lines?
I thought it was almost identical to the book in many, many places. I mean, literally word for word, like, minus one change, like in the two comparative sentences I read a bit ago.
I wouldn't have noticed any change on the Dream of a Thousand Cats. It felt like that was straight out. Calliope, I felt like there were a lot more changes, but I felt they delivered most lines pretty well.
Yeah,
I like the Dream of a Thousand Cats dialogue because it was dialogue heavy. I mean, besides the animation, I mean that's what got pulled me along watching it. So, I would say I like the Dream of a Thousand Cats dialogue far more than Calliope, even though Calliope had some good ones. Yeah, very good. I think I agree with you, Bill. Sandra Oh just knocked it out of the park.
she was
very
good.
Yeah, she
enjoyable
did.
of an experience. You think, oh, this is going to be a nice bedtime story. It is not. It is not. But it's still a very, you feel very entranced watching it.
This is probably the first time I've ever seen a animated, animal talking, and they're not trying to move the animal's lips to the voice.
Right. No lip flaps.
And I like that.
done. I've seen that done that way before.
I like that.
I've seen it successfully done both ways. This is a good example of it being done without the mouths moving, but trying to remember trying to think of, there was something I was thinking about a couple weeks ago that it was like, that's a good version of that. But
relevant to the channel is wheel time the wolves, if we're going to see something more like this versus mouth flapping.
Oh, we better not see mouth flapping.
Yeah,
I will be so pissed.
I don't think Wheel of Time could do it in such a way that it would work. I really don't.
I'm just trying to match Hopper.
I know Hopper being like, young bull, big dog, young bull.
That would be horrific. I would not like that.
No, me either.
No.
I'm so mad.
Oh, man. No.
For
Context.
me, on the dialogue, though, I got to go with Calliope. It just hit me in the feels a little bit more. Yeah, some of the lines given in that were just, they were gut punches that felt, at the end of it, it's like, okay, that was awesome. So,
I really
I think
liked,
overall Calliope, I think, was my favorite dialogue-wise.
I can't go one or the other for me. And, I think they're both great. And not just because they stuck true to the book, but this section in the books was particularly well written, I think. And actually, Dream of a Thousand Cats in the comic book, I think, is maybe my favorite artwork I've seen yet for the Sandman. Was the Cats one. I want more of that. I want more, that cool art style.
I did enjoy Neil Gaiman doing the Dead Crow.
Yes.
That kind of made me happy and smile. So, like, holy crap, that's Neil Gaiman. Okay.
As one question that was brought up was that a crow or a vulture? The dialogue said crow.
Yeah,
I think that's
crow,
a crow.
but I think it's like sort of, it sounded like a buzzard looking.
But like the way it was
thing.
sitting, it was like it looked like a buzzard or a vulture or something, but hard to say.
Might be just because it was all skeleton.
I think that was its level of decomposition. Yeah, it was kind of down to here as opposed to here.
Crypt Keeper version of a crow. Having fun up there, Jen?
Yes. Doing my version of the Crypt Keeper crow, anyway.
Yeah. Let's see. Do I have any other notes on this section? Oh, no.
Max has a handy skull, as you do,
Nice.
within hand's reach.
Yeah, I think Derek Jacobi, first of all, was brilliant as that asshole at the beginning, Erasmus Fry, and what a name, Erasmus Fry. Grogu.
Grogu looks so cute.
How easy it is to distract Glenn.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very
That's
easy. Yes,
Arthur
I like him as
Darvill.
an actor. He's so good. As soon as he came on, I was like, "Ooh, you pulled him."
Yes.
I was like, "Nice."
Arthur Darvill was great,
Yeah, he's
but
great.
Melisanthi Mahut, I hope I'm pronouncing her name right, as Calliope,
Mhm.
Yeah.
was just brilliant.
Mhm.
Agreed.
She was immediately was attached to her character from the moment just everything she did. I was just like, I like this performance.
Very good at the hard stares. She's very good. Touch you. I like that.
Yeah, I
And
think
Arthur Darvill,
Calliope was outstanding. I mean, like I said, some of her dialogue was just beautiful in a way because she had been through so much and was so traumatized, but at the same time, she was so not forgiving, but accepting and willing to move on. There's a point where Morpheus says, My suffering was nothing compared to yours. And rather than, say anything about it, she says, let's not compare suffering. That only compounds it. That is a beautiful thought. And I loved that. That sort of moment captured me. And I'm like, that is somebody who, hasn't necessarily forgiven, but at the same time has accepted and is ready to move on. And it was just beautifully done. Loved it.
it definitely that line was one of the ones I wrote down for her when I was talking themes.
So related to that, the next question is scene or sequence you most remembered, enjoyed, or hated.
Guess I kind of jumped the gun on that one.
I hated watching the bag with the brick go into the water.
Yep.
I wanted to give that guy some cement shoes and say, "Hey, go fetch."
Yeah,
I hated
probably the worst.
I hated seeing Richard Maddock fall. Because he starts out likable, and part of it's if you're a Doctor Who fan, you're already naturally inclined to like Arthur Darvill. If you're a Legends of Tomorrow fan, you're automatically inclined to like Arthur Darvill. He's just a darling in the genre community.
Mhm.
And so watching this, I was inclined to like Arthur Darvill, and then he turns into an asshole. Didn't start that way, but he became it. And I'm just like, great casting there too. But
Well, I think that's what Max was pointing out is that, from the comic standpoint, there's no moment where you like that guy. Even at the beginning, you don't like him. He's horrible.
no, they really did make At first, I had written down when I was writing my notes earlier before rereading the comic, I had written down, they've made him less of an asshole, and they made him not do the bad thing. And then I had read the comic and I was thinking, it's like it was stuck in my head. And then that's when I noticed, why is that? Why? What? Oh, okay, never mind. They did make him the asshole and do the bad thing. And it's I don't know. I think he was brilliant in the role. I can't imagine anybody else eliciting as much of a reaction as he did for me.
I feel like I'll touch on what Bill said previously. The things that I like the most is going through all of that and then having Morpheus and her talk about how they both have grown, but that's not really what they came to talk to each other about, but that's what the conversation ended up being anyway.
Right.
And just showing that, you can just move on and that sort of thing. I think that message is very good to have, especially when you have a very dark episode where there's a lot of violence that happens. it's a kind of a good way to say, okay, we're ending this, because it's the end of season 1, at least for a little bit, now that we've been green lighted for season 2, and then we're gonna have more. But for at least for now, it's kind of an end, and it's a kind of way, hey, a lot of things have happened, a lot of very horrible things have happened, not only in this episode, but for the season 1, right? And we're just gonna try to move on and build, even though we're not necessarily forgiving. So I don't know. I haven't read ahead as to what future subsequent episodes are going to be like. There are some in my esteemed company that know better than I do. But I think it's kind of a very good point to end all of the negativity on. So I thought that was kind of cool. So that kind of needed to be done. Not only did Morpheus grow, but she also learned as well. And the two together could just walk off into, well, at the end, it just literally shows her not walking in the sunset, but kind of like into the fog anyway. And it was kind of sad because you don't really hear more about Calliope anymore. It's not like a death march, but at the same time, it's like she just goes back to frittering off and you don't really know anything about what happens to her. For
Not
now.
necessarily.
For now.
She makes the comment. She makes the comment that she's going to go back and work on changing the laws that allowed her to be captured, laws that she had no place in writing, or neither did her sisters. So she walks off with a purpose.
That's good.
So
Morpheus said he'd work on those too.
Yes, he did.
Sequence I remembered, hated wise, like Glenn Big Kittens was horrible. Same with the second story, where he essentially chose to not let Calliope go and do the evil he did. Hated it. The enjoyed side was I love seeing the baby kitten at the end having its little dream. And then in Calliope, I enjoyed the scene where he's kind of going psychotic with all these ideas.
And some of those ideas were brilliant. I'm like, dude, that is a great idea. Man inherits a library card to the Library of Alexandria.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, you could write a story on that. That is so awesome.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure somebody probably has.
Don't forget about the two old ladies with a weasel on vacation.
On vacation. Yeah.
Streets paved with time. What does that even mean?
A rare goldfish that turns into a giant wolf at a full moon, but it's a goldfish.
But kind of going back to what I'd said before about he didn't really have any redeemable feature from the audiobook, and in here he kind of sort of was less of an asshole, and then they kind of redeemed him toward the end, sort of, if you want to call it that.
Trying to make you feel sorry for him again, at least.
Yeah. That's something I've noticed in like movies in general last decade, is we have less villains who are just evil to be evil. They try to give them some reason for why they're evil, doing the evil thing to make you sympathize with them. And I feel like there are some stories where you can have a villain, there is no reason to sympathize with them.
The Magneto effect is what I call it, where you have that character who does bad things, but in a way you understand where he's coming from.
I think every villain should have motivations. You should be able to identify when you read or watch something, to identify their motivations. Because every hero or every villain, thinks they're the hero of their own story, as it's been said a million times. So
main character
they're doing what they're doing for a reason, unless, of course, you've got the absolute madman like John D.
Which is okay. And it's okay to have your bad guy be bad.
Sometimes you just need someone who's LOL, I'm evil.
Yeah.
Spoken like a true D&D player. I enjoy that.
We had decades of that.
Well, I think that's kind of why. I think Max is right. They've made that change, and I think it's because I guess there's pushback of, okay, well, why, we have to have a big bad more than just being a big bad. What's their, like you say, motivation? So some people are pushing back on that, and we've gotten that for every story. Now you're seeing people like Max, and I can actually agree to a certain extent. Do I like a villain with motivation? And is it far more tantalizing to have a villain with motivation? Absolutely. Yes. I want to know these villains' backstories. But at the same time, like, Does it need to be done all of the time? No, it doesn't. It just depends on. I'm a big. I like characters in a story as well, but I'm also a big just story for as far as the plot goes. Like, what is the story? And if a character doesn't need all of that, then I think it could take away from what's going on with the plot. It just kind of depends on how much it eclipses what's going on with the plot. If the villain's backstory is a major plot point, then yes, but it just kind of just depends. I think I see where Max is coming from.
I'm thinking of the guy in the 24/7 story. Like, he always felt to me of the LOL, I'm evil, I'm gonna just do bad shit, and there's no redeemable function for him. It's like he's just nothing.
Mm-hmm.
His motivation is nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with having a nihilist, who is just like, no, I want everything to burn, and I'm okay with it.
Like Morden.
Yeah,
but he wanted things to burn for reasons. He thought that there was too much pain and suffering, and that lies caused were at the heart of cause. And that's why he had that whole thing about lies and the truth. I wouldn't say John Dee was just insane. I would say he was insane in the fact that his rationale for his motivations was twisted as hell.
He read way too much Catcher in the Rye. It's all there is to it.
It's always Catcher in the Rye.
Phonies.
All about those phonies.
For me,
yep.
When the guide or the world of Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time came out, the big white book of ugly art, and it's not just white anymore. When that came out, we got a lot of backstory that we hadn't had on who the Forsaken were and why they fell into the shadow. At that point, for me, they became more interesting villains than the Dark One. Yeah. Why is the Dark One the bad guy? Oh, because he's the Dark One and he wants to break free and break them. That's really nothing. That's just being the Dark One. That's being the root of evil.
Mm-hmm.
The Forsaken, they actually had reasons for it. So I don't know. I found that I'm with Jen. I really do like to have motivations or reasons, to be able to identify why a villain's doing what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. But sometimes mystery's a little good too. It just kind of depends.
Well, yeah. I agree. But eventually I want to know.
Forsaken need to be agreed. Yeah, if you get too far into a story, like Wheel of Time is so large. Okay, right. let's delve into this.
In theory, the Forsaken were more interesting. In practice...
Yeah, they just screwed everything up. They got in their own way. Yeah.
There's only a couple of remotely competent Forsaken.
Yeah.
Hey, my favorite was
Masana.
And she absolutely tore the tower apart. So
she did a good job. She did a good job with the tower.
Yeah, agreed.
And she would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for that meddling Egwene. Anyway. Yeah.
Egwene out here.
It's all right. She got her as a giant crystal. She's a geode.
She is.
Where
we got Final Fantasy.
Themes, Mac?
All
right. So take
themes.
us into themes.
Themes.
Humans are effing horrible. I mean, that's the theme, dude. Come on. Some humans. Let me rephrase that. Some humans are pretty horrible.
Yes. I found a couple of the cats.
My thing is look, I know there's a question of themes, but I'm just gonna say this: if you don't care about whether these cats live and die, at least just kick them out of your house and lock the door and leave them don't tie them in a sack and put it in a river so they drown. I mean, I don't think kicking them out of your house and shutting the door is good, but I mean, it's got to be better than being drowned alive. I mean, at least give them a fighting chance to have a life outside of your house. Shit.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Themes.
Unnecessary cruelty.
Yeah, I mean, you still don't have to deal with it if they're outside of your house. Just let them go.
One of the themes I picked up on, you're hitting right there. It's, there's that capricious and cruel nature. Dominant groups or dominant individuals have over those who they're dominating over.
Mm-hmm.
And that often leads to people fighting back. And we see it both sides and just the cats. The cats are fighting back twice. Once, but still, it's like cats are, and it's something you see in a lot of fiction.
I think change is another one. From both.
Yeah.
The cats are looking to change the world literally through their dreams.
And speaking of both, agency, being, how was it I put it? Where did I put my notes? Exploitation versus agency, and it's present in both stories. The cats were exploiting the humans, and the humans didn't like it, so they dreamed of a world that kind of stomps on cats. It's retribution.
That's what you literally I was waiting until you finished, and my theme was going to be retribution. That was the word that I was waiting on to say. Yes, for both stories is
We're in sync.
Or having the ability to have retribution and choosing to bow out of that, and that's also a choice as well that Calliope
made. Yeah.
So I guess that goes more with agency as well, because you can have agency and just choose to say no, I want it to stop, and that's your choice. But yeah, absolutely, retribution is a huge thing that ties both of these otherwise kind of standalone stories together. I think that's the big thing that ties Calliope and this into one central episode for me. Because I'm like, why are they together? Obviously, other than time restraints. But that's
the other element is that no matter how bad the situation is, one can still have hope. One can still dream. And everybody in here that's been in a bad situation still had some sort of hope, some sort of dream, including Richard Maddock. His hope was the muse, because he was desperate. And I can understand being desperate. What they said, 9 months, and he's already spent the advance that they gave him, and
2 years.
He hasn't written it. 2 years, okay. Well, maybe
and
the
9
one
months
2 years
overdue.
Okay, so yeah, that money's gone. I guarantee it. that money they gave him as an advance is gone. He ain't paying that back. So he's desperate, and he saw hope. I'm not condoning his actions, but it's that whole understanding the motivation behind the character's actions, and it was out of that hope that he had when desperate, and you see that in both stories.
For me, it's sort of a theme or anything, but at least in the 2 stories, the audiobook ones, there are just some crimes that you cannot be redeemed. And those were 2 crimes in both episodes that were just unredeemable.
Agreed. Yeah, 100%.
Like, you gotta be some sort of special person, not only to lock up someone in your house, but then while that person is locked up, not able to move or go anywhere or do anything, and then you like violate them. It's like, yeah, you have to be that kind of person before you ever came across this person, because I don't care. Like, I feel like, listen, man, I owe some people some money, but I can't be violating somebody against their will, locked up in my, like, I physically can't do that. So
did you remember the interaction he had with that nurse that brought him that hairball thing? She said, I wanted to be a writer, and he said, don't even try.
Yes, I do remember that.
Yeah, she said my parents made me do something else to fall back on. And he said, your parents are smart.
Yeah.
Which is true. He was 100% true, because the vast majority of writers never get published.
Yep.
Regardless, though, that, that evil in his heart was already kind of there.
Yeah, it was. He crushed her dream with those words.
Exactly. That was a prelude to that. And it seemed odd to me that the end of the episode, she like forgot all about that. It was willing to help him with this strange quest of removing this lady from the house.
I picked up on some sort of sexual tension though coming from her. So that may have allowed that. Yes.
Same lady.
Oh.
Yes. You guys didn't pick up on that? Okay.
No,
I
He even said, "Oh, it's you again," or something like that.
Yeah, he did. No, it was the same person. And he goes, I signed the book for you once. I think she did that more out of her own, which was not returned. It was not reciprocated from him, obviously, by the way. But her own, because I felt like she was like, I've always wanted to be a writer. I kind of felt that a little bit coming from her. And then at first, you not knowing how the story was going to go, when she walked out there, I'm like, oh, are they going to? And then he was like, shutting it down. And I think he ruined more than one dream that she had coming up there. There were several different levels of, I felt coming from her. And then so when he was like, please, can you go to my house? I think she did it more because she's like, oh, well, he needs me to help him. Okay.
I took that as the doctor side of her taking over.
That too.
So yeah, for me.
That too as
I
well.
I can't remember her name, but she's on another Netflix show that would fit for this show to talk about. Don't know if we're going to or not, but she's on Shadow and Bone or whatever it's called. Yeah. One of the main cast, or regulars at least, or recurring.
She did that pretty well. She did a pretty good job acting.
Let me see if I have any other image notes.
Yeah, I think mine have been covered. It was pretty much people are awful and hope.
You see Erasmus doing exactly what people do so that they can stomach treating other people like shit. And that's convincing themselves they're not human. And he does that about Calliope, and that she's not really a person, she's not human, you don't need to worry. And that mindset makes it easier for him to be abusive. Of course, I think Erasmus probably was an asshole before he got the Muse, long before he found the Muse. So, but
I'd say the word you're looking for is they find a way to justify their actions.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a rationalization.
Well, we do technically have 4 optional questions if you want to go through those.
Sure, it is.
Since it is a series finale. Or season finale.
We're not.
One question is, how well did the writers and production handle the characters? Did the writers and directors understand them, and casting choices, motivations, backgrounds, etc.?
I can't imagine anybody could make the argument that they didn't get them right, because the writer was there. He was one of them. So I think they did a great job. It's one of the better adaptations we've done so far.
Agreed.
In many ways, it's the most literal page-to-screen adaptation we've done so far.
Oh, yeah.
For me, the changes that they've made throughout the entire season make sense. And that's what I care about. In any of the changes they did make that I can look at and analyze, I'm like, I see why they did that. And did it harm the show? No. Did it make it better? Yes. So for me, that is the key to an adaptation right there. If you are going to make a change, have it help, not hurt. So.
Yeah.
I agree with Bill on that. And, like I said before, that the one change I saw throughout was giving these characters, like I said, motivation, some redemption angle, something. And whether that enhanced the show or took away from or is debatable, that's something that stuck out to me.
No, I totally see where you're coming from, because a lot of the bad guys are way worse in the source material. I think Funland they pretty much nailed. His creepy sort of vibe was spot on. So they nailed him there.
Yeah, the Corinthian was pretty creepy. He was spot on as well for me from the comics.
Your favorite character, right?
No.
I know.
I was like, no. You know what? I did end up liking him more, especially towards the last couple episodes. The last episode he was in, he warmed on me. However, he just missed it with the charm for me.
See-
I don't know why, but yeah, that may be I understand that I may be looking at that may be a viewer problem. So I recognize that about myself. That's very
When it
possible.
comes to antagonists' performances this season,
Mhm.
and for me, it's a choice between two one-episode wonders of Arthur Darvill's version of Richard Maddock and I'm blanking on his name. Tywin Lannister, Charles Dance. Charles Dance's performance as Burgess
So
Meredith. Or
good.
Burgess Meredith? Wow. Burgess.
He's the penguin.
What?
He's the penguin.
Roderick
Really?
Burgess?
Yeah. Oh, thank you for knowing who that was. Somebody. You're old like me. Of course you knew. Roderick Burgess as Roderick Burgess.
Yeah. He's so good at all the villains that he does, though. So it's like Charles Dance is playing a villain. Isn't that just kind of given? But yeah, he's just very good.
Did Jen have
Yes.
anything to say on the topic?
Sorry.
I've actually lost what the actual topic was. We've done what was the topic again, and I'll answer your question.
It
specifically.
was.
Cast
How old did the
Sorry.
writers and production handle the characters, the story, casting choices, motivation, background, etc.?
I agree with Bill on the fact that the changes that they made which were definitely big ones, especially towards the end, were all necessary and made the story better to flow on screen. So I appreciate those choices. Casting, phenomenal, out of the freaking book. I think that was probably one of the better cast things that I've seen in a long time. So yeah. All aces as far as that goes.
So the next question is, how close was the adaptation to the source material out of 10? Jen?
Oh, I would probably, there's some huge deviations in some parts, but I mean, pound for pound, as far as beginning to end, it's gotta be like an 8.5 out of 10. I would say that. That's what I would rate it that high. I really freaking would. Because I think the changes that they made were it just made more sense, especially with Lydia. How do you
Lyda.
Lida, yeah.
her situation, what was going on there, kind of what was going on with Jed, the changes they made with him. I really do think that everything they did was true to like the actual like heart and source of the story that they were trying to convey. So yeah, I'll say 8.5 out of 10. I feel comfortable with that.
Bill?
Honestly, I give it a 9 because I can point to every single episode and I can give you at least 3 or 4 actual chunks of dialogue that are straight from the comic.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely straight from the comic.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of the dialogue. So for me, yeah, they did change some story aspects. I think they worked as opposed to, hindering it. But the heart and the core of the story is there, the way it's supposed to be there. And it was represented the way the comic has always felt for me. So for me, it's the best adaptation I've seen probably in 15 years.
Wow.
So definitely a 9 for me.
Glenn?
I have to say, probably 8.5, maybe a 9 for accuracy. Probably a 9. Depending on the issue, it's going to be a lot higher. I'm sure. I think there's a couple episodes where you could probably say an 8 or 9.5 to a 9.9 range on accuracy, but there's always deviations, and they're necessary, and in some cases improved, some cases not. But yeah.
For me, I always approach this as the literally how close was it, and I put it at like a 7, just because it's about 30% not accurate to the books. So it's about a 7 to me. Like, I'm not saying that as a bad thing. It's just, it's about get 7 out of every 10 things correct to the book.
No, that
and
makes sense.
the minor
That's your
changes,
scale.
that's where it goes.
Yeah.
And, as an adaptation itself, I'd say 10 out of 10. Which actually leads us to the kind of a next question is if you had never read the books, how would you rate the show as if you had never read the books?
I like this question.
I watched it before reading the books, so
Easier for you.
I think, yeah, I'd say probably an 8.5. 8.5.
I was actually doing it. I would actually read the part like the same day or the day before.
Mhm.
So they were chugging hand in hand for me as reading as far and watching. So I got both. Like I said, I like this adaptation better so than the comic. So I think I would rate it higher as a form of media than reading the comic. Yeah.
Bill?
That's man, that's so hard for me to do. I've been reading it since the 90s. So
Mhm.
I'm trying to think. My wife never read it, so I'm going to go off of her. And she enjoyed it. There were aspects of it that were confusing to her that she didn't understand right off the bat. So it took some explaining. I would probably give it a 7 from her standpoint since she had never read it. She enjoyed it. She finished the whole series. She thought it was good. She did say there were some parts that were confusing. The whole, second half of the season was very confusing for her with the vortex. She wasn't sure what was going on. So I'd say a 7 for her. For me, it's a 10, but I am attached to the source material like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
This is your favorite comic? This is your favorite comic?
Yes. This was kind of my escape during my high school years. This was my world that I delved into when high school sucked so bad.
That's me
Everything
and
was
Dragonlance.
horrible. This was it. Me dreaming about death. The character, not.
Yes.
But yeah. So
when I had read or listened to the first half of the audiobook, I got that finished and then the show came out. So I can answer for the last half in saying that for me, without having read the last half, I'd put it like, say, a 9.2. And then for the next question, which is how much you enjoy the show, taking account all the changes, everything else, I put it like, say, a 9.0. Because of those minor things that they just like the redeemable aspects of the characters, giving them motive, all that stuff, kind of took away some aspects, even though other areas they actually made it better. So it's like just the very minor tick down, just because like the 24/7 tale, I didn't like how he was, I don't know, given more redeeming qualities, if that makes sense. Or like the Calliope guy, I did not like how they try to make him more approachable.
Or what they did to Aunt Clarice.
Yeah.
Still salty about that.
It's like it's nice that they didn't make it as dark, and it makes it more watchable in some ways, but in other ways it's like it just takes away just the minor bit to me.
See, Max, like I said, teenage kids. You can watch it with your teenage kids. It's not
I would
that
not
bad.
watch Calliope with my teenage kids.
But nothing really gets shown.
I'm not sure about that episode.
Why does he come up with a scratch on his face? Well, honey,
I'll just make sure if I want to traumatize them, we'll do Neverending Story.
Like I said,
oh my
kids.
god, I love the
Neverending
Neverending Story, but the fucking Artax Max.
Atreyu and Artax.
Oh my god,
See,
rip
that
guts out.
It will.
That movie never did it for me. I've seen it 5 or 6 times when I was a kid and a teenager, but my sister was really into it.
Do you have a heart?
And
I was like,
yes, but that movie just.
Are you talking about the scene or the movie? Hold on.
Movie.
Okay.
The movie.
Okay. What about the Artax scene? Did that affect you at all?
I mean,
just the
yeah,
scene?
it sucked seeing the horse going sinking into the swamp.
Thank you. I think I have my answer. I appreciate that, Glenn, for me. But it wasn't necessarily
back on
bad.
topic.
Sorry.
So we don't get too far off.
My apologies.
Go ahead.
Do you have a rating for combining both together? How you overall enjoyed the adaptation?
I'm gonna say this an 8. I just give it a flat out even 8.
Jen?
9.
Oh.
Bill?
10 for me. the way they changed Brute and Glob into Gaul, and then her redemption at the end also led to showing Morpheus's change and growth. And those kind of changes that they made, I think connected those issues way better than we could have, you will just reading the comics. So I think blending the two together, yeah, that's the thing, is most of the changes were improvements for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's why I would give it a 10. I mean, as much as I love the comic, I gotta say the series, the changes they made is more streamlined. It's more user friendly, I guess you could say. You don't have to be a depressed goth kid like I was to understand it and love
Right.
it. So for me, complete success.
Pretty much wraps out all of the questions.
Well, thank you guys. Bill, thank you for coming on so much of this season with us to help us round out our panel. I'm glad to have you join us. Thank you guys at home for watching. We will be back next week to discuss season 2 of The Expanse. I believe we have Leia from Threefold Talk over on Melchior Talk's YouTube channel. She'll be joining us for episode 1 of season 2. And we got a whole bunch of guests lined up for season 2 of that show. Hope to see you next week. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to be awesome.